Morning, everybody. Am I audible at the back? Okay. I have a habit of speaking very loudly. So in case I'm too loud, guys at the back, please tell me to reduce my volume. Thanks to QAI for giving me this opportunity to address you on a topic which is very, very close to my heart, and a topic which is, I think, impacting all of us in this room today, as well as people across the globe. Digital transformation. Now, what is digital transformation? And I'm sure you'll agree with this. Different people have different definitions of digital transformation. So for some, it's all about digitizing their processes. For some, it's about getting onto the cloud, buying the new tools, technologies. For some, it's about going online. If you ask me, yes, it's all of those. But fundamentally, it's about disruption. The disruption which is happening in our industry today, which is forcing organizations to really think differently. And that's what I'll talk a little bit about today in terms of how is this disruption forcing us to look at new markets, to look at industries in a different way, and to really look at reinventing our organizations and the companies that we work in. So, okay. Is this working? No? Sorry. I have to come here and do it? All right. Technology. No problem, so I'll operate it from here. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit painful, but please bear with me. So why do you basically need to look at this entire transformation? If you look at latest research, what research has been telling us is that every single industry is getting impacted by the digital transformation. About 31% on an average is the impact on an organization's revenue due to digital disruption. 31%. That's almost about 1/3 of an organization's or an enterprise's revenue, which is going to be impacted, possibly shrinking because of the transformation that is happening digitally. And this is even more stark for enterprises or for industries where there's a bigger level of digitization. For example, telecoms, about 44% of revenues are going to get impacted. And which is really not surprising because for an industry which has really been operating on legacy systems, existing hardware, software, et cetera, for a fairly large period of time, any disruption will be having that much amount of greater impact. If you look at India, right, if you look at what's happening with Jio, within 3 years of their setting up shop, Jio today has the largest revenue amongst all telecom service providers. It has the largest number of installed user base, right? So that is what is happening as far as the industry is concerned, and that's the kind of risks enterprises are facing. Right. So what's the response to this specific risk? Now, there are a couple of strategies that people are ending up following. These range from doing nothing, which is, my current business model is effective, it will hold me good, there is no problem, to really looking at saying that, I need to disrupt the way my current business model is working, to looking at saying that, I need to enter into new markets. So either I digitize the core or I get into the new markets. Recent survey by McKinsey shows that 8% of enterprises or the people that they surveyed said that their current strategy is well enough. But a whopping 92% said that they're either already made a change or they're in the process of changing. And change is they either move to a fundamentally new business model or they look at their existing business model and look at seeing that, how do I digitize the core? About 36% adopt a mixture of these two. So seeing how I can bring about internal improvements as well as looking at how can I increase my, induct new business models as far as my business strategy is concerned. So is this helping? Yes, it is helping. What we've seen is that organizations who have taken this step are definitely performing better than organizations who have not. If one were to divide organizations into 4 categories, First is the traditional incumbent who's really not doing too much, believing that the way I work currently will still hold me good. The second is in terms of the people who are competing in new sectors. Third being incumbents who are competing digitally. And fourth are your complete digital natives. This is just not working. Your complete digital natives. Now, if you see what's very interesting is that about 47% of the organizations who have decided to start competing digitally, right? About 47% of them have growth which is greater than 10%. And this is a huge difference as compared to only about 30% of organizations who are saying that, we are not going to do anything. Only 30% of them have those kind of high levels of growth. So the message is very clear. Unless you are willing to change yourself, unless you're willing to relook at the markets that you're working in, right? The kind of stability that you'll have as far as your business is concerned is going to be a problem. So why is this happening? Fundamentally, because if you look at the market today, the customer is essentially the king. So it's not about getting, a new product, just about, doing some amount of packaging, etc. But it is about catering to a more knowledgeable customer base who have information at their fingertips. They have information at their fingertips which is available, which is updated on a regular basis, on a very, very frequent basis. They know what's right, they know what's wrong, they know what's available, and they're of the breed which is, I know what I want, I know where I want it, and I want it now. So that's the kind of customer bases that industries are now having to cater to. And these customers have the entire selling process or the customer experience process has multiple moments of truth, right? So what are moments of truth? Moments of truth are basically where you are interacting with your service provider or in your entire purchasing process. You're actually having a touch point with the service provider. It can be as simple as, let's say, if you're booking an airline's ticket, your moment of truth starts right from the time when you're searching on, let's say, Make My Trip, saying that, what are the various options that are available, to the kind of payment which you're making on any website, etc. So there are multiple moments of truth today. And if any of those moments of truth are suboptimal, you have the risk of losing a customer. So what essentially organizations are doing today is that they're not selling a product, they're selling an experience. And it's this entire rush to see how I can sell a better experience as far as my customers are concerned. And that's where newer markets are really being reimagined. So let's look at a couple of examples, right? From the manufacturing space. Nike, very well-known brand, right? Nike has adopted a strategy where they're going to pare down their distribution network of 30,000 retailers to only about 40 select stores. And these are the stores who are really going to be focusing on selling customer experience, telling the brand story, and really providing additional amount of services as far as their customers are concerned. They're heavily focused on their online strategy. They have launched a new app called Nike, I think it's Nike Plus, the new Nike app, where they've launched a loyalty program called Nike Plus Direct. And what they have as far as the loyalty program is concerned is that they provide a lot of exclusive offers to the subscribers of their loyalty program. The entire inventory that they have, 1/3 of their inventory, is available only online and available only to the people who are a part of the loyalty program. They get other experiences in terms of special offers, customized support, customized, let's say, training plans. They get better rates on the kind of products. They get free shipping on their products. All in all, what it does is it provides the customer an enhanced amount of experience when they're buying a product as simple as a pair of shoes. Today, they have 100 million plus customers who are a part of their loyalty program. And they have a very clear strategy of taking this up to 300 million by the year in the next 3 years. Let's look at another example. P&G. Now, P&G has this product. Their highest-selling detergent product is called Tide Pod. P&G has launched an online direct-to-customer selling process for Tide Pod. So they are essentially moving away from their traditional channels of selling to big box retailers like Walmart and the Tesco's and so on and so forth. They're selling all of this online. So for a customer, he or she doesn't really need to walk to the nearest retailer to buy a Tide Pod, or he doesn't even need to go on to any online store to buy a Tide Pod. As long as they sign up for this entire program, there's an automated refill which happens every month based on the customer's needs and requirements. Obviously, this has additional benefits in terms of free shipping, etc. P&G, associated with this, they've launched a new service called Tide Cleaners. And that's a really interesting service. What they are doing is that they are telling their customers who are using their products that if you want your laundry to be done, you just drop it in any of the deposit boxes which might be available within their apartment complex, in their offices, in any storefront. Put your dirty laundry over there, and the app will notify you once your laundry is done, and you can just go ahead and pick it up, right? So that's how they are trying to work with their customers to give their customers a different experience. Let's look at retailers, right? Amazon.com, well-known story. Do you know that at one point of time, a couple of years back, Amazon did not do its own shipping. It had 0%. It used to depend upon other partners to do its shipping, etc. Now, to provide a better customer experience and to have better control over their supply chain, what Amazon has done is it has invested significantly into this entire logistics business. So they've got about 50 planes of their own. They've invested into 150 million square feet of space to build their supply chain facilities, multiple fleets of Amazon shipping vehicles, and so on and so forth, to the extent that today, 26% of Amazon's shipping is done by themselves. And they don't even only do their own shipping, they do shipping for other people as well. The offshoot of this is that UPS, which used to have 44% of Amazon's shipping business, their share has gone down to 22%. FedEx from 9% to 3%. So the disruption which Amazon was doing for themselves went ahead and disrupted a completely different industry. And that's what is happening in today's connected world. Let's look at a different example, right? Product players. Product players are selling the services. So every product player is getting into an as-a-service model. You're all aware of Microsoft, right? Where a lot of their products are now available on the cloud. So you have Office 365, which is available as a service. Let's look at something as basic as Caterpillar, right? So Caterpillar devices, what Caterpillar has now done is about 1 million of their devices, of their systems, is now connected to the cloud. Each of these devices have multiple sensors attached to them. And these sensors are able to tell Caterpillar when is a particular machine in need of repair, or when is a part of a particular machine likely to fail. So Caterpillar, which earlier used to have a sales model of, you sell spares, right? But when you're just selling spares, you are doing the entire thing reactively, right? So for a customer, I have a Caterpillar machine, one part is not working, I go and order a spare. Now they are able to offer a completely new service as far as their customer is concerned, to say, how do I do preventive maintenance for you? So even before your part actually fails, I'm able to tell you that this is the likelihood of failure, and hey, this is the spare which is available for you, and this is how you can order. Completely new revenue stream as far as Caterpillar is concerned. Huge amount of benefits as far as the customer is concerned. We are seeing this happening in healthcare as well. So you've got healthcare service providers who are getting into insurance. You've got insurers who are getting into healthcare. So if you look at Aetna provides healthcare benefits. Aetna has launched a service for its customers in London, and it's a very, very interesting service. It says that if you're in a particular zone in London, zone 1 to 4 in London, and if you book an appointment on the app, and the service is called V Health at Home. If you book an appointment on the app, you will have a doctor who will visit you at your home within 4 hours. So they have disrupted the entire healthcare services, the healthcare industry within that geographic location. Again, for the customer, it's a huge benefit, because if you look at the healthcare system in countries like US and Europe, it is not like what we have over here. You don't have a doctor who will come home, not that today in India also it happens, But at least we've seen that entire thing in India, right? Aetna is introducing that kind of a service for its customers, and it's a completely new thing as far as Aetna is concerned. Last but not the least, fintechs. And all of you, I'm sure, are aware of the fintech story. It's a large, this thing. I'll tell you something personally, right? Now, before demonetization, which I think happened a couple of years back, I used to go to an ATM every other week because I had to pick out money for running my household. Now, after demonetization, I've now gotten on to, I've got Google Pay as well as Paytm. I do all my transactions through those apps. Every single thing, right from my dhobi wala to my pani puri wala, right? And forget about the big shops any which ways. I think if I go to an ATM now, I will not even know how to operate an ATM, to be very frank, because I don't remember the last time I went over there. So that's the kind of disruption that is happening, and that's how markets are being remade to suit the new customer needs and requirements. So how does this magic happen, right? And before I get into that, we talked a little bit about digital penetrating all of the industries. Let's talk a little bit about the trends of disruptions in specific industries, and I've picked up for you today the automotive industry, right? I think this is one industry where the kind of disruptions which are happening are extremely visible. Electrified cars, pretty normal even in India. We had Mahindra Reva, which came out a couple of years back. Today, if you go into a lot of modern offices, you will actually see charging points for electric cars, right? If you look at autonomous vehicles, yes, I think it's no longer a sci-fi imagination. It's going to be a reality very soon with the kind of investments that are being made. In fact, partially autonomous vehicles are already available. If you look at BMW Series 7 has a feature where you can do automated parking, and you can do that remotely. So parts of that is already available as far as the automotive industry is concerned. Shared vehicles, and it's a very interesting model. Sharing or carpooling was always very common. So you used to figure out your friends and families. You could carpool with them. I've seen in my childhood, people who had vehicles, they would take nearby children and drop them to school and stuff like that. Now that entire shared vehicle concept has been changed, and you actually today have an opportunity to monetize the empty seats in your car. How many of you are aware of Quick Ride? Anybody? Yeah, Quick Ride? So Quick Ride gives you that facility. So you can now share not only with your immediate colleagues, you can share with your extended colleagues within the organization. You can share your seats with perfect strangers from other organizations, as long as they're in the same route that you have. So that's the kind of change that you're seeing, because hell, pardon my language, really looking at monetizing the empty car seats. Who would have thought of it a couple of years back, right? All of us would have been, can I give you a lift? Yeah, I'll give you a lift. The entire monetary transaction part of it would really not even enter the mind, right? But today you have platforms which are available, which actually encourage this kind of a behavior. The entire connected enterprises, and my previous speaker talked a little bit about connected vehicles as well. Having devices which can talk to each other within the vehicle, talk to other devices which are available externally. Part of this is already there. GPS-enabled cars can actually provide a user, based on the signals that they're reading up from the nearby towers, can actually tell the users what's the next, what's the best route to take. In fact, it's very interesting. We don't even realize how some of these technologies impact us. I was reading a very interesting story, a news report. This happened in Bangalore. There was a gentleman who went to the police and said that my wife has been killed in a hit and run. So when the police did a little bit of investigation, they saw that the gentleman was driving a rental car. That rental car was GPS enabled. So when the police looked at the GPS route and when they replayed that route, what they actually saw was that the car had reversed and gone over a couple of times, which led them to the conclusion that it was actually not a hit and run, it was actually murder. And this is not something which I'm making up. This happened in Bangalore, right? Who would have thought technology would have had this kind of an impact as far as the customer is concerned? The yearly updates of vehicles, all of you would be aware of this, what Tesla is doing. So sitting in your driveway, you can get your vehicle updated. So in fact, for Tesla, their latest updates actually promise about 5% improvement in performance as far as the drivers are concerned. When we were starting today's session, we were all talking about Bangalore traffic. Imagine if you had to get your vehicle upgraded and you didn't really have to brave Bangalore traffic and go to your nearest service center. You could just sit in your garage and your vehicle would be automatically updated, right? Last, mobility as a service, and that's the new trend which is coming up, which is really going to move away from the behavior where people buy cars. Because if you really look at it, what you're buying is not a car, you're buying mobility, right? So mobility as a service is going to bring about a trend where people will stop making capital investments into a car. Because if you have a solution which will plan an entire trip from you, so let's say you're going from Hebal to Kodathi, right? It will plan the entire trip from you where it will get you a vehicle, it will get you the tickets on the train, and then give you the last mile connectivity from Karmalaram to Kodathi. If you had an application which could do all of that, right, and you just had to, it would automatically debit your account as far as the money is concerned. Now, if that could happen, how great would that be? And that is the trend which this industry is also seeing. What this essentially means is that your IT strategy then needs to move from systems of enablement to systems of engagement. So there's a huge amount of IT implication which is there when an industry is moving. And if I look at specifically for the automotive industry, this will be significantly impacting their revenue and profit distribution patterns. So today, new vehicle sales is about 48% of the overall revenue and 38% of the overall, and 41% of the overall profits. That is something which is going to significantly change. While new vehicle sales in the year 2030 is still predicted to be a leader, if you see the 22% over here, that's mobility as a service, and that's the new change which is coming up. And the revenues from the profits from the new service is going to be far, far outstripping what is the profits from your existing services. So that's how you're seeing industry after industry changing because of the transformation that is happening on the digital side. Now, traditional companies are really struggling when they're trying to undergo this kind of a change. So we've seen a couple of patterns. One pattern is, just use a digital technology to cut costs and to and improve efficiency. Now, please realize if that's the only thing that an organization is doing, they're soon going to become irrelevant in the future. Because a digital strategy is not about how do I improve cost and how do I improve efficiency. It's all about how do I deliver better services to my customer. Cost and efficiencies are byproducts at best. The second pattern that we've seen is that we will experiment with certain things because we don't know how it is going to be turning out. Again, a lot of times when experiments happen in silos, the difficulty happens when you're trying to scale it to the rest of the organization. I worked with a particular bank, and they had been doing a lot of these kind of experimentation. But those small experiments could never get scaled beyond that particular project or beyond that program. And until the bank really had an enterprise level strategy as far as transformation is concerned, until they institutionalized that kind of a model, they did not see the kind of benefits that they were expecting. Last pattern is, let's set up a different unit. We will get a lot of hotshot people who've done digital before, and we will get them to start a new unit and thus drive our digital transformation. Again, this is a very, very risky strategy because unless you're able to integrate the unit successfully with the rest of the organization, this will not work. One of the a famous failure is Ford. Ford in 2014, when they wanted to start their digital transformation initiative, they created a separate unit. They called it Ford Smart Mobility. The intention was to get into autonomous vehicles and so on and so forth. Now, this building was headquartered far away from the parent company. It had no integration whatsoever with the rest of the organization. Ford kept on pumping money into it to make it successful. Quality in the rest of the organization suffered. Within a very short period of time, their share prices went down and the CEO had to step down. So these are the kind of challenges which traditional organizations face. And when we speak to leaders, as part of the latest survey that WIPRO had conducted, most leaders, most CXOs said that their key focus is really in terms of how do I scale and how do I balance the old with the new. Because you cannot say, I will not do the old, I will completely do away with the old. Because you're really not a digital native. You've got a whole history that you're living with. So how do you balance these two is what is something which becomes extremely important. Let me just, given the fact that I'm going a little bit low on time. So I will get down to the core of the thing, digital transformation. So all of this, what is really happening as far as enterprises are concerned. Now let me give you my definition of what I believe is digital transformation. It is nothing but delivering value at the intersection of strategy, design, and technology, right? So there is no point in having a product or a services strategy if it is not commercially viable, right? It doesn't make value for the business. There is no point in doing something which the customer just doesn't like. You might have a great product, but your entire customer experience is extremely poor. And you've got a great idea, but technically, there is no way that you can pull it off. Now, successful organizations who've jumped the shark as far as digital transformation is concerned are ones who've been able to do this extremely well. Let me give you the example of one such organization, the weather company. Now, the weather company was originally a weather channel, right? So most of you are youngsters, but some of you who are old like me might remember that in the early days, we used to see weather on TV. And typically, at least in India, somewhere around 8 o'clock news is when, weather predictions used to come out. Anybody remembers that? Yeah? Yeah, you're taught not to believe in that as well, right? Now, what happened with the entire mobile transformation, what the Weather Channel realized, and that was, incidentally, the Weather Channel, that was their main source of revenue. Now, with this entire mobile transformation, what they realized is that the customers had now changed. So they wanted to look at weather data on their mobile devices. They wanted to look at it several times in a day, and they would look at it only for 1 or 2 minutes, right? So earlier, when you have a channel, the kind of ad revenues, et cetera, that you can get would be tremendous. But now you've got a customer who will at most look at it for 2 seconds or so, right? So you cannot get ad revenues in that way, because in 2 seconds, what kind of ads? Even if you run a ticker on a mobile device, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to see it, right? They then realized that when a customer is looking for data multiple times a day, data has to be accurate at that point of time in the day, right? So the kind of data that they had to consume from devices spread across, across the globe had to be much, much more, or as compared to what was earlier. So earlier they would consume data 4 times a day. Now they have to, with the kind of specificity that people are looking for, they would have to consume more data so that they could process that data and give trends to their customers. So they did a couple of things. They obviously upgraded their entire thing from a technology perspective. So they went on to the cloud, they upgraded their people, so they had a lot of data scientists, and they identified newer revenue streams. So one of the very interesting experiments that they did, they took all the retail data from customers, 5 years retail data from customers in a particular region, from retailers in a particular region as to how their sales have been. And when they analyzed their data, they saw 3 common patterns. One pattern was, when it rained, people bought more jelly tarts. So they said that, we don't know why that is happening. So they kept that trend aside. They found a different trend saying that, when it rains, because, you can have, when the weather is likely to be damp, you can have mold, etc. So antifungal product sales rose, which was pretty much intuitive. They identified a third pattern, which they said that based on the weather, the shampoo buying pattern of women differed. So apparently, when the weather was warm, or when it was hot, women bought a different kind of shampoo as compared to when the weather was likely to be rainy, etc. So they looked at their trends, and this was based on 5 years of data. They looked at their trends, they went to P&G and said that, this is what we have seen. So we would like you to do an experiment along with us. So P&G gave them some money, and they ran an experiment for 6 months. They created a new app where they would give women this kind of information that, tomorrow is going to be a frizzy hair day because it's going to be raining, or it's going to be a staticky day because it's going to be cold, and so on and so forth. Within 6 months, P&G's shampoo sales increased by 26%. So they identified a completely new revenue stream as far as they were concerned. They've obviously done a whole lot of other things, but what the weather company was, from being just a weather channel, they then got acquired by IBM. Their then CEO, David Kenny, he now heads IBM's Watson, right? And they are now using a lot of their data and the analytics which they are providing to different industries across the globe. I will skip this because I actually have 0 seconds left. I'll take 5 more minutes if that's okay. Couple of things to remember as a part of the transformation, right? While all of this is happening, for the organization, there are several fights that are very, very important, which they have to take up and which they have to win. And a lot of this is something which comes from the experience that we've had working with multiple clients across the globe. First is in terms of fighting ignorance. Digital, as I said, then the kind of trends that are happening is immense, right? And for the CXO, it is very, very important that he or she is kept abreast, because you cannot take a decision if you don't know what's out there. A lot of organizations get into the thing of, I'll do what I've always done, and just because I've thrown in a specific tool or technology, I'm expecting different results. That will not hold good. So fighting that ignorance, understanding who your customer is, what makes your customer tick, what adds value to your customer, right? Today, customer, up until a couple of years ago, customer was just demographics. Customers are no longer demographics. It's psychographics as far as customers are concerned. And understanding that becomes extremely important. Second is in terms of fighting fear. These are large investments people are making. And their biggest thing is, what if it fails? How do I know it is succeeding? What should I measure? Should I micromanage, right? What tells me it is successful and what tells me it is not successful? A lot of times we get into these vanity metrics, and the importance is to stay away from those vanity metrics and really look at metrics which matter. I'll give you a simple example, right? Especially in the Agile world. Everybody gets very, very enamored. Velocity. How many story points are you kicking out of the day? It doesn't matter what your velocity is. If your time to market is still 6 months, because you have bunched everything and you're doing one mega release, you've not been able to cut down on your time to market, your high velocity is of irrelevance. So look at what matters and measure what matters. Fighting guesswork. Some other CEO friend of mine has said they've got a lot of benefits with DevOps. I will also do DevOps, right? Or somebody had some tool. I will also do that tool because I think it will work for me. That kind of guesswork doesn't help. It is very, very important that when they're on the digital transformation journey, you have the ability to constantly learn, do small experiments and learn from them. Capital One, I think in my mind, one of the poster childs of transformation. Capital One has set up Capital One Labs, and Capital One Labs does 80,000 experiments every year. Small experiments where they can continuously iterate, sometimes fail, but they learn from their failure. So unless you have that kind of a mindset, you're able to have that kind of a mindset, the digital transformation journey becomes very difficult. Fourth, in terms of fighting diffusion, when transformation starts, yes, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm with people, but it's very easy for the energy to diffuse. So to ensure that you are continuously having that kind of energy, it is important that whatever initiatives that you've identified, you have a backlog of programs underneath it, and you're constantly prioritizing and reprioritizing that backlog. So you pick up those things which are critical and which are value adding. Lastly, fighting mistrust. And this is a very interesting thing, because I've seen organizations which often swing between two extremes. One extreme is, my internal team knows nothing. They've not been able to do it. They will not be able to do it. I will get an external consultant or an external partner to drive my transformation. So essentially, transformation gets outsourced. The other extreme is, Yeah, I've taken a couple of courses here, there. I've attended a couple of training sessions. Maybe I've gone to some business school, taken a course. Me and my team will do it ourselves, because you know what? External consultants, they don't know our, they don't know our context, they don't know our organization. I don't think they'll be able to add any value. Either of these positions don't work. An organization has to find a middle ground. And what we have typically seen, leveraging strategic partnerships who brings in an outside-in perspective, or what we call outside-in innovation, is extremely important. What is working for others? What will work for you? Let's look at the same problem with a different pair of eyes. And learning from your internal practitioners such that you can do inside-out renovation. Whatever are your existing systems, how are you changing your existing systems? And the change of your existing systems, take inputs and insights from your internal teams to really understand what is working, what is not working, and what has to be changed for us to be successful as far as digital transformation is concerned. I went way beyond my time, so I don't think I will be given the luxury of offering any questions. If you have any questions, please do meet up with me. I'll be available at least till lunch. And thank you so much for being such a great audience. It's been wonderful speaking to you, and I hope this was useful.
Thank you so very much, ma'am.